Chapter 5. Wake up, boy. The gruff voice of General Grievous barked loudly, awakening the 6-year-old. Zikalov sat up and rubbed fists against his sleep-filled eyes. Bathe yourself and get ready to meet Dooku. Your clothes are over there, the cyborg gestured towards the dresser, where a pair of undergarments, black boots, pants, and tunic awaited him on top of the imitation wood. Do I have to? The child whined groggily. Yes, now get ready. Grievous snarled roughly, scaring the boy. He began to walk out of the room and turned and growled out one last thing as an afterthought. And no whining. With that said, he exited the room with the flourish of his cape and left the boy to prepare himself for the day. The young Kalish clambered out of bed and obediently did as his father ordered. What had his father in such a grouchy mood? The child didn't know it, but the general was feeling a little stressed about the imminent encounter with the Sith Lord. The youngling cleaned himself as best as he could and got dressed, running into some minor difficulties as he did so. He put his shirt on backwards the first time and nearly put his boots on the wrong feet. He fixed the problems with a frustrated sigh. He really didn't want to meet Dooku. Soon, he was ready and sat on the bed awaiting his father's return. 10 minutes later, Grievous re-entered the room coughing. Once he had composed himself, he inspected his son and shook his head in disapproval. Did you comb your hair? The child looked sheepish and shook his head. I forgot. Then do so now. The boy hastened to do his father's bidding, and once he was finished he looked up at Grievous warily. The father wished that Tekar was there with them now. The child needed his hair braided and he wasn't sure if his large duranium fingers were capable of the task. He could always call the captain, but he didn't think the Nemodian knew much about hair braiding. So, Grievous took it upon himself to at least try. His son needed to look presentable, if not his best. He was mildly surprised when he was able to perform the simple deed. It took a few attempts, but he managed. Soon, the child looked ready, but something wasn't quite right. Something is missing. He walked over to the dresser and began to search every drawer. He soon found what he was looking for. Stand up. The child leapt to his feet without question and eyed his father curiously. Grievous approached and knelt down on one knee and fastened a belt around his son's waist. There. Now you are ready. The child shook his head. I forgot one thing. He went over to the dresser and retrieved the training lightsaber and clipped it to his belt. Grievous was torn. He wasn't sure if it was wise for his son to carry that with him to the meeting. If the old man believed his son was already training in lightsaber combat while he was Force-sensitive, it might do more harm than good if Dooku believed his son was a possible future threat. Then again, Kalish were warriors, and even children were given weapons and learned how to use them at young ages. He came to a compromise. I believe it wise if we leave this here. Grievous took the training saber from his son and handed him the Mew Mew knife instead. A protest died on the child's lips when he saw the severity in his father's eyes and took the knife, attaching it to his belt. He really wanted the lightsaber. Grievous crouched down and put both hands on his son's shoulders and looked him in the eyes. Now listen carefully. When we meet the Count, be sure you make eye contact. Don't mention your dreams and do not speak unless spoken to. Understand? Wow, that was a lot for a 6-year-old to remember. The child nodded solemnly. Yes, father. Now we must go. Come, quickly. Grievous led the Kalish boy out and took him to board a shuttle. The Malevolence exited hyperspace, reaching their destination, the moon of Kolma, where Count Dooku's lair was located. Only a few knew of its whereabouts. One of those few, besides Grievous himself, was Dooku's Sith Master Darth Sidious. As they flew down to the tower-like structure, the general watched the child closely. He was staring at the floor, tapping a foot nervously. Zikalov, look at me. The boy looked up forlornly and met his gaze. Remember, true warriors fear nothing. You have your weapon with you and I will not let the old man kill you. The child nodded and then resumed his staring contest with the floor. Soon the shuttle touched down on the landing pad and both father and son disembarked and headed into the structure. They passed large stone statues of humanoids holding swords that lined the hallway. Red tapestries hung from the ceiling and draped down the walls. Soon they entered what appeared to be a throne room of some sort. There was a desk at the top of 3-tiered steps and Count Dooku sat behind it, waiting for them. The child did his best to be brave but couldn't stop the small shiver that raced down his spine when he met the object of his nightmares face to face. "General Grievous, you're late. My apologies for the delay, my lord. I have brought the boy, as you requested." "So you have." Dooku gracefully arose out of his chair and slowly traversed down the stairs to meet them. When the child met the man's cold, hard, red-colored irises, he wanted desperately to lower his gaze and hide behind the imposing figure of his father. He did as his father instructed and maintained eye contact, however uncomfortable it made him feel. Dooku smiled and turned to Grievous. "So this is the child the Jedi wanted. Tell me, has he displayed any Force capabilities since arriving in your care?" "Yes, my lord. When I first found the boy, he used the Force to destroy 2 of my Magna Guards." Impressive for one so young. He knelt down in front of the Kaleesh youngling, appearing to be friendly. "What did the Jedi teach you, boy?" Zekalov had to think and tried to remember. "That the Force lives in all of us and we have to concentrate to use it." "And can you?" The boy shook his head. "No, but bad stuff happens when I'm angry. Or sad. The Jedi told me that I should be calm to use the Force. When you destroyed those 2 droids when your father found you, how did you feel then?" "I was angry that he killed Telariel and sad because he was going to leave me there." Dooku stood back up and faced Grievous. The boy began to relax. So far, his nightmares weren't coming true. And then the Count spoke. "He can wield the Force, that much is certain. However, there was something more I was hoping to find in this one." Zekalov's eyes widened and he took a step back fearfully, recognizing those words. "What would you like me to do with him, my lord?" "He cannot be allowed to become a Jedi. The risk is too high. You must execute him immediately." "Will you not train him as your new apprentice?" "No, this couldn't be happening." The child backed away in abject horror as his nightmares slowly began to unfold before him. "I already have an apprentice. I cannot take another unless my current apprentice is slain. I do not foresee that as a possibility anytime soon. She is highly skilled. This boy has nothing promising to offer me. His talents, his skills are mediocre. Now I will not command you a second time. Kill him." "Stop." The child screamed loudly. He glared hatefully at the Dooku, knowing what would happen if the man continued to converse with his father. Grievous glared at the impudent child for disobeying him and for speaking out of turn. He was more than capable of handling the situation. The stubborn boy appeared to have ignored him and continued speaking vehemently. "You've said all of this before. I know what you will say and what you will do. And I won't let you." The child pulled out his Mew Mew knife and stood defiantly a couple of yards away, the crude weapon pointed at the old man. Dooku unexpectedly did not look surprised. He chuckled humorously and approached the child. "So, you have the gift of foresight. Prove to me that you can see the future, young one, and I will spare your life." A childlike growl escaped the boy when he remembered what was to happen next. He ducked as Dooku moved to backhand him and he rolled clear of the man and raised his weapon, ready to fight for his life if need be. The Sith Lord clapped his hands slowly, looking amused. It was almost as if he had known all along. "Very good, you will live to fight another day, child." He turned and looked at Grievous seriously. "I give you my consent to terminate Ventress. If you succeed in doing that, I will train the boy as my new apprentice. I know why the Jedi wanted him. He has a very rare gift that hasn't been seen since the time of the Old Republic. With training and with time, his ability will grow." "What is this gift, this ability you speak of?" Grievous demanded to know. This child may possess the skill to use what was once known as battle meditation. He can see the future and will be able to know exactly when and where an enemy will strike. He could be the advantage we need to win the coming war. If the Jedi Council learns of this, they will undoubtedly come for him. They will never take him, Grievous growled menacingly. They better not, or the consequences will be on your head, General. I will destroy Ventress, my lord. And my son will be yours to train. Take the boy with you until you've completed your mission. In the meantime, begin to give your son lightsaber training. Once Ventress is dead, I will instruct the boy myself. And what of my family? Grievous questioned hopefully. They will remain safe. You have a war to win and your son is distraction enough. You will see your family again once we have claimed total victory. Do not fail me. As you wish, my lord, Grievous bowed and then gestured for his son to follow him. The boy was eager to leave and didn't bother giving Dooku a backwards glance. If he had, he would have seen the triumphant smile on his face and the wicked gleam in his eyes. The shuttle landed in the Malevolence's main hangar bay. The boarding ramp lowered and Grievous strode out, his cape trailing behind him. His son ran silently beside him. He could feel his father's anger and he knew he was in trouble for something, he just didn't know what for. Father? What? Grievous spat angrily. Why are you mad at me? The general stopped walking and turned on his son. You disobeyed me. Because of that, you will now be Dooku's slave. He was going to hurt you. I had everything under control. I didn't want or need your help. Grievous raged. Tears formed in the child's eyes, but he didn't let them fall. He could have killed you. The boy shouted, uncaring if he and his father had drawn an unwanted mechanized audience. The battle droids watched the conflict from a safe distance. I can take care of myself, I've survived worse. The cyborg snarled. The Kaleesh boy remained deathly silent and glared at him. He felt mixed emotions. He wasn't sure whether to scream or to cry, so the child opted for both. Fine. Next time, I'll just let you die. The tears flowed as he sobbed openly. I hate you. The Kaleesh boy turned and ran as far and as fast as his legs would carry him, not giving his father a chance to reply. Grievous was stunned as if he'd just been slapped in the face. He was furious at his son's impudence and had half a mind to run after him and punish him. The other half kept him rooted to the spot. I hate you. His son's words echoed in his mind. His intention was never to make the boy hate him. The child just needed discipline. Someday his son would thank him for that. Right now, both father and son needed time to cool off and collect their wits. Grievous went to the training room and began to viscously destroy the sparring droids, unleashing his full-blown fury on them. His would-be opponents never stood a chance. Young Zekalov ran to his room and retrieved his training saber. He clipped it to his belt and walked as far away from his father's abode as he could and went exploring. He stumbled upon an amazing sight during his adventure. The end of a tunnel led into a huge area that had a network of transit trains. He boarded the nearest one and the train sped through the belly of the ship. He was too angry to care if he got lost. The droids that saw him wandering paid him no mind and went about their business. He picked a random platform to exit off of the train and saw a large painted sign that labeled this section of the ship Section C-300. The child shrugged and headed through the blast doors and down the hallway. The hallway branched off into a nexus of corridors leading to various rooms, many of which were primarily for storage. He entered a mini warehouse of some sort that had boxes and crates stacked on shelves that went up to the ceiling. The boy investigated one of the boxes on the nearest shelf and found miscellaneous droid parts piled inside. He went deeper into the murky dark, the thought of turning on a light panel escaping his mind. His curiosity was too dominant to worry about trivial, semi-helpful things such as that. Besides, Kaleesh could see in the dark. That didn't seem to matter, because he still managed to trip over something. He regained his footing and he peered closer at the object that had deterred him. It was an off-lined commando droid. It was slumped over, its legs sticking partway in the aisle. This was the first commando droid the child had ever seen. He wondered why this one was in storage. Were there others like this one that were online and functioning? He moved on, checking crates, and found a few more commando droids. They all appeared to be non-functioning. The child was soon going to learn that appearances could be deceiving. In trying to make his way out of the warehouse, his tunic got caught on the corner of one of the crates. The lid managed to fall on the cranial unit of the commando droid he managed to trip over on his way in. Zekalov slowly backed away when its optical sensors lit up and it slowly whirred to life. He had a bad feeling about this. The commando droid leapt to its feet once it had booted completely online and assessed its surroundings. Once its optical sensors landed on the lightsaber hilt attached to the Kalish youngling, it unsheathed its vibrosword from its back. Zekalov screamed and took off running. He tried to remember which corridor would lead him back out to the train station but knew he was hopelessly lost when he realized he just ran in a complete circle. The crazed commando droid wasn't far behind and the child knew he was going to die. The boy kept running and screamed for help. Maybe one of the battle droids would hear him and come to investigate. The commando droid caught up and circled the child with its wickedly sharp sword. "Someone help me." In answer to his desperate screams, a couple B-1 battle droids approached from the south corridor with weapons ready. "Hey you, halt!" The B-1 battle droid ordered the robotic menace. The commando droid turned on the newcomers and engaged in combat with them. Zekalov used the distraction to his advantage and ran the same way the B-1s had come from. He knew that true warriors never ran from a fight, but he knew he wouldn't last 3 seconds against that thing. The child heard the sound of approaching metallic feet and sighed with relief, believing that they belonged to a B-1 droid. A cry got stuck in his throat when he saw that the commando droid had been the victor in that fight. Fear gripped his heart and he slowly backed away. In his panicked desperation he screamed again, tapping into the force, and unknowingly called for the one person he knew would save him. "Father, help me." General Grievous felt much calmer now that he had sated his rage. He was just about to place 2 of his lightsaber trophies back in their respective places in his trophy room when he actually heard a mental scream. "Father, help me." Grievous swore and took the lightsabers with him. He barked orders to the nearest battle droids and told them to fan out and find his son. What kind of trouble did Zekalov get himself into this time? "Sir, Units T-099 and T-909 were in the south sector of Section C-300 and failed to report in. Send in the nearest squadron to investigate, immediately." Grievous ran in that direction and hopped on a transit train that took him to the C-300 platform. "Sir, one of our squads has engaged a rogue commando droid. Only 2 of our troops are left." The cyborg general wasted no time and quickened his pace. When he arrived on the scene, the commando droid was just about to deliver a killing blow on his child. Grievous roared furiously and attacked the malfunctioning unit, and a few seconds later, succeeded in destroying it. If the commando droid had been operating at full capacity, the cyborg Kalish knew it would have been a little more difficult to destroy. The lithe, stealthily, assassin-like models were designed for covert operations and had performed well in all the test runs and simulations. It wouldn't be long now until they employed their services against the Republic's clone troopers. Zekalov was afraid his father was mad at him and tried to sneak away. "Zekalov, what have you been doing?" The child knew he was trapped and looked guiltily at his father. "I was only looking around. It was an accident." Grievous growled in frustration. What was he going to do with this boy? "You will stay in your room until further notice." The child's shoulders sagged, and he nodded in acceptance of his punishment. The general approached him and knelt down. He gently used a clawed finger to tilt the boy's head up so he could look him in the eye. "Make sure accidents like that don't happen again." The genuine concern crept into his voice. "Yes, father." The child was very thankful that his father came to his rescue. He unexpectedly lunged forward and attached himself to Grievous's shin plating, in an attempt to hug him. Grievous stood up and tried to shake the boy off, but he clung stubbornly to his leg, and that action made Zikolov laugh. The general half sighed and half growled and lowered his leg back down in defeat. He softened, however, at his son's next words. "I'm sorry. I don't hate you, father, I love you." The cyborg Kalish picked his son up and allowed him to hug him for real and carried him out to the awaiting train that would take them back to their quarters. "It's time I began to teach you how to fight. Your training begins in the morning." At long last, Zikolov was going to learn how to become a true warrior. Chapter 6. General Grievous's last child had a hard time sleeping the night before his first combat training session. He was excited, and no matter how hard he tried, his restless body and his overactive mind wouldn't rest. Zikolov fiddled with the training saber's hilt and turned it on and off a few times. He didn't dare play with the training weapon after his father's lecture and stern warning. Flashback: lightsabers, even your training saber, are weapons and should be treated as such. They are not toys. Understand? The Kalish boy nodded almost absent-mindedly, trying not to look bored. "If you fail to heed my instruction, you will suffer for it, I promise you," Grievous growled and raised a claw in warning. Zikolov's golden eyes widened, and he knew his father never lied when it came to punishments. "Why, yes, father." "Good. Now get some sleep. You will rise early tomorrow morning and your training will begin." End flashback. Zikolov looked at the clock on his nightstand and groaned. It was already 1 a.m. He would have to wake up in a few hours. If he ever went to sleep. This is hopeless. He buried his face in his pillow and stiffened when he thought he heard someone approaching from down the hall. He relaxed his body and feigned sleep. He was terrible at fake snoring, so he decided that slow breathing would do the trick. The door whooshed open, the soft hiss of hydraulics and the slow clanking of footsteps alerted him to his father's presence. The general stood and watched him for a moment. The child tried not to laugh when he heard his father turn to leave. The door hissed shut and silence greeted his ears. He remained still and quiet for a moment longer to be sure his father was out of earshot, and then released a pent-up giggle. He actually managed to fool him. "Zikolov Quilamek Shilil." A gruff voice barked. The child screamed and fell out of bed in his panic, and the lights triggered on, revealing the towering figure of his father, who was standing, hunched over near the door. "You can't deceive me, child." How did you know?" He scrambled back into bed. The cyborg general half chuckled and half coughed in apparent amusement. "It's a secret that only a father knows." "I can't sleep," the Kalish youngling admitted. "I believe I know how to fix that. Stand up." Zikolov slid out of bed curiously. "Begin to jump in place until I say down. You will drop down to your stomach and use your hands and feet to push yourself up. Then you will jump back in place." His father wanted him to exercise at this hour? Down. Zikolov did as instructed and dropped down to his stomach. He struggled to push himself up, his body not yet conditioned and his arms not as strong, but he obeyed nonetheless. He bounced on the balls of his feet and dropped down again at the next command. This exercise continued for a good half an hour. At long last, the boy had no strength left and collapsed on the floor, completely exhausted. "Now go to sleep. You will awaken again in 5 hours' time." But, no whining. "Father, Zikolov." His father's warning tone silenced him immediately. The child frowned and crawled back into bed. "Okay, I will go to sleep. Will I have to do this tomorrow?" "Yes, that and much, much more. Rest, my son." Grievous left and prepared the training room for the following day. Zikolov had no trouble sleeping after that. All too soon it seemed he was pulled out from his deep slumber. His whole body felt sore. He groaned tiredly, and the battle droid that served as his wake-up call had to practically haul him out of bed to get him moving. He pulled his training clothes on, uncaring that his tunic was inside out, and shuffled into the hallway and squinted his reptilian eyes against the harsh glare of the blinding lights overhead. He made his way to the cafeteria for the organic members of the crew and half-heartedly ate part of what was supposed to be his breakfast, and then found his way to the training room. General Grievous had yet to arrive, so the child sat against a wall and rested his head against his knees and dozed off. The sound of a lightsaber activating startled the boy, and he instinctively rolled back up to his feet. He shook his head dizzily and reached for the weapon that was usually attached to his belt, only to find it missing. His father growled angrily. "You dare come to your first lesson without your training saber?" Zikalov felt his heart drop into his stomach and backed away slowly from him. His father took one menacing step forward and pointed his lightsaber at his son. "If I had been your enemy, I could have slain you with ease. Always be on your guard." "I'm sorry. Go get it. Now." The child fled and didn't stop running until he had his training weapon firmly in his grasp. He returned, panting and out of breath, and showed his father that he had it. "As punishment for foolishly forgetting your weapon, you will perform 50 up-downs." Zikalov didn't dare argue and tiredly did as told. His sore body protested and his arms began to shake near the end. He sighed with relief when his punishment finally ended. A thin sheen of sweat beaded on his brow and a few strands of ebony hair stuck to his forehead. He swept the hair out of his face and looked up at his father expectantly. "Before you become worthy enough to use your saber, you must first earn it." Before he could ask his father what he meant by that, he was given severe instructions to rigorously perform a series of strength training and cardiovascular exercises. He was given 2 15-minute breaks and used them to rest and rehydrate his body, then his training continued. At one point, he dared to complain that he was tired, and as a result, Grievous had him stop his current exercise and had his son give him another 20 up-downs. He kept his complaints to himself after that. After 2 hours of grueling physical conditioning, he was excused for the remainder of the day. Grievous knew pushing his son too far too fast would cause more harm than good. The child would strengthen with each passing day and his stamina would improve. Whenever the youngling was not training, he was studying with the captain. The general of the droid armies tirelessly began to hunt down Asajj Ventress as ordered by Dooku. He nearly had her in his grasp at one point, but the sly and cunning female Dathomirian eluded him. Grievous vowed he would not stop until she was dead. The war with the Republic truly began a year later, and the child grew in knowledge and in strength. During one skirmish with the Republic, Captain Ferenzi was slain in battle when clone troopers overran his position during a daring raid on one of the supply depots on the outlands of Separatist space. A young Nemodian who had been the captain's understudy took his place. His name was Selvk. Another year passed and the Kalish boy observed another birthday. The 8-year-old had now learned basic hand-to-hand combat techniques and basic lightsaber forms. He saw less of his father as the war commanded the general's attention. Count Dooku, on some occasions, would visit them on their ship. He knew how important the child was with his raw ability and would instruct him on how to tap into the Force and taught him how to meditate. "You must clear your mind. Feel the Force flowing through you. You can bend the Force to do your will. Concentrate." Zikalov closed his eyes and concentrated. He could feel both light and dark sides of the Force. He could see the dark, red, and angry aura surrounding Dooku. When he reached for the light side, it was soothing and sweet. The dark side beckoned and called to him. It wanted him to join it and become one with the darkness. It promised him power and strength. He began to gravitate towards it and reached out hesitantly. Once he touched it, it began to seep into his very core. He liked this newfound strength. It was powerful and he could feel the dark energy flowing through him. "I sense you have much anger within you, young one. You have a strong aversion for the Jedi, for the crimes they committed against you and your people." The 8-year-old hated the Jedi for killing his mother and for stealing him away from his family and his home. He hated them for keeping him separated from his father those first few years of life. Maybe that last bit wasn't 100% true, but Zikalov felt that they deserved the blame. In due time, you will use your aggression against your enemies. It will make you strong and powerful. For right now, focus on what you want to see. You want to see the future destruction of the Jedi Order and your father's victory in battle. Once the child cleared his mind, he could make out hazy images, blurred and faint. The deeper he concentrated, the images began to clear. He saw his father fighting someone, a bald female wielding 2 red lightsabers. His father was attacking her with everything he had. She somersaulted over his head and neatly sliced off 2 of his 4 mechanical arms. Grievous snarled in rage and blocked her next attack. His attempt to decapitate her failed when she ducked and force pushed him away. The images began to blur again as he lost his concentration. The images dissolved completely. He opened his eyes. "What did you see, child?" "My father, he was fighting a lady with 2 red lightsabers." "Did you see the outcome of the fight?" Zekalov shook his head. "No." "Meditate each day, boy. Once your father has succeeded in destroying my apprentice Asajj, you will truly become my student." The man stood and half smiled at the Kalish youngling. "Remember to trust your feelings and your instincts. They will serve you well in the future." He began to walk away and turned back to Zekalov and added something as an afterthought. "And when the Force tells you something bad is going to happen, I suggest you listen to it." He then departed, leaving the child to ponder his words. General Grievous found his son a few minutes later, having just missed the count, and updated him on current events. "Those Republic dogs have just learned of our fleet's position. You will go with Captain Self to my flagship the Invisible Hand in a nearby quadrant. You will remain there until I have dealt with them." "Why can't I stay with you?" "The battlefield is no place for a child. You will be much safer with the captain." "I want to help you." Grievous laughed. "You long for a fight, just like me. Well, you will have one, when you are ready." "When will I be ready?" "Once Ventress is dead and your training is complete." "But that could take years." Zekalov sighed heavily and looked down at the floor. "I wish I was ready right now." Grievous tenderly tipped the boy's chin up with a clawed finger, and his golden eyes were smiling beneath his mask. "You will be soon enough, my little warrior. Have some patience." Captain Self made his presence known and bowed to Grievous. "My lord, I am here to escort your son to the Invisible Hand as ordered." "See to it that you do." The general looked severely at Zekalov then. "You will do exactly as Captain Self tells you. If I hear that you misbehaved, you will be punished." "Yes, father." The boy followed the captain to an awaiting star cruiser that would take them to Grievous's other flagship. He brought his training saber with him. It never left his side. His first training lesson that he had with his father was forever imprinted on his young mind. A few hours later he was on board the Invisible Hand. He tried to listen to Captain Self's history lesson, but his mind kept wandering to other things. He wondered where his father was right now and if the battle had even started yet. Zekalov imagined that he was a little bigger and stronger and that he was helping his father fight and destroy their shared enemy together. That day just couldn't come soon enough. "Are you paying attention?" Zekalov was startled out of his musings and looked up at the captain with a guilty smile. "No. Sorry, I was thinking about my father. He's going to win, isn't he?" Captain Self nodded with a smile. "Yes. He is one of the greatest warriors I have ever known. He will win. Now, back to the subject at hand." Zekalov was sucked back into his studies. A little while later, he retired for the night and crawled into bed. He placed the training saber next to him on the nightstand and closed his eyes. He felt himself drift between waking and sleeping. Then he felt it. A terrible feeling began to eat its way through him, and he knew something bad was going to happen. That made it almost impossible for him to finally rest, but he soon succumbed to sleep regardless. He was standing on the bridge of his father's ship. But it wasn't the Malevolence. His father was shouting orders and commanding the droids and his officers to continue their assault on the enemy fleet. Starfighters whizzed past the viewports firing laser blasts and torpedoes. Then the scenery changed and Zekalov was below deck somewhere. An access panel on the lower level was blown violently in by some kind of explosive charge. An elite squad of clone commandos entered the ship. If we succeed, Grievous will be nothing more than a memory, men. Let's get it done. They split up. 2 of them took a corridor that led to the shield generator while the other 2 headed for the engine room. From the sound of it, they were going to disable the main systems and be sure his father was destroyed along with his ship. All Zikalov could do was watch helplessly as the clones mowed down enemy droids one after another. They succeeded in taking out the shield generator by setting explosive charges and disabled the reactor core to their main engines. The clone commandos left the way they came. Zikalov ran to the bridge and screamed at his father, waving his arms to get his attention. He tried to warn him of what was going to happen, but the general couldn't hear him. The ship was rocked by internal explosions and damage reports were shouted amidst the chaos. "Sir, our main deflector shields have been destroyed. Our aft and starboard engines have been disabled." "Impossible," Grievous growled. Zikalov looked out the viewport and saw 2 missiles heading right for the bridge. He screamed at his father just as the missiles impacted the ship. The resulting explosion destroyed the entire bridge. His father and everyone on it died instantly. Then everything went black. Zikalov awoke with a start. He looked around his room half expecting to be pulverized and relaxed when he realized it had been a dream. That cold icy tendril of fear gripped his heart and that bad feeling persisted. Dooku's words surfaced to mind and Zikalov remembered the last thing the old man had said to him just before he left. "When the Force tells you something bad is going to happen, I suggest you listen to it." He slid out of bed and headed for the bridge where Captain Selk was commanding the crew. "Captain Selk, where is my father now?" The captain was surprised to see him there. "What brings you to the bridge at this hour? Is my father aboard the Malevolence?" The captain shook his head. "No. We could not risk the Republic learning of the new weapon that is currently being constructed on it. They sent the Malevolence to another sector." "Why do you ask?" "My father is in danger. I need to warn him." He ran for the nearest comm station, ignoring the captain's puzzled shouts. "What do you mean? What do you think you are doing? Which ship is he on? I need to know." Captain Selk was baffled by the child's urgent persistence. "He is on one of the support cruisers. He said he didn't need the Invisible Hand or the Malevolence for this current campaign. His mission is simple. All he has to do is force the Republic fleet into a retreat. And then he will rendezvous with us here. He's not going to meet us here unless we warn him." "Warn him about what, child?" "There's no time to explain." Zikalov growled in frustration and activated the nearest comm station and opened up a channel with his father's ship after Captain Self supplied him with the proper transmission code. The hollow image of his father appeared and he looked surprised to see his son. "Zikalov, I'm in the middle of an important... Father, 4 clones are going to sneak on board your ship from one of the access tunnels in the lower level. 2 of them are going to go and plant detonators and destroy the shield generator. They will also cripple your aft and starboard engines." The general peered at him with doubt. "How do you know this?" Zikalov sighed, and his anxiety levels spiked at the prospect that his father wouldn't listen to him. "I had a dream. You and everyone else died when 2 missiles hit the bridge. It was only a dream. Go back to sleep, father. I know it's going to happen, you have to believe me." The child cried desperately. Grievous looked calmly at the boy and his hollow image flickered briefly. "You have nothing to fear, son. I will return to you. I promise." The transmission was cut before Zikalov had the chance to reply and he slammed a fist against the console angrily. "If he doesn't believe me, he and everyone else on that ship are going to die." Zikalov had a hard time willing the hot tears away. His lip trembled and his breathing hitched when he met the stunned expression on the captain's face and the curious stares of the droids on the bridge. Did no one believe him? He knew that his dream was real and that it was going to happen. He could feel it. He closed his eyes and tapped into the force. He reached for his father's faint signature and sent him one last plea. "Please, Father. Please believe me." If his father didn't, he would never see him again. And then all hope was lost.